Hello, this is Mrs. Ward, and I'm going to go over the practice problems for the section that's covering difference quotient. So remember, this is your difference quotient formula. So we're going to use this formula whenever we go to do a problem. And what we're going to do is we're going to substitute in x plus h every place that we see in x. And then we're just going to subtract the original function from that new function. So to do this, I'm going to say -3. In place of x, I'm going to write x plus h plus 1, that's the function with the x plus h. Now to do the minus f of x, I'm going to do minus, and then f of x will be that -3x plus 1. And we're going to put this thing all over h. When I distribute my -3, I'm going to have -3x minus 3h plus 1, and then distributing the negative sign, I'm going to have positive 3x minus 1, and again, this is all over h. When I look at this, the -3x and the positive 3x will equal 0, the positive 1 and the negative 1 will equal 0. So I'm left with -3h over h. The h's simplify, and my final answer is -3. Again, I cannot stress how important the work is versus just getting the answer. Eventually, you will recognize the pattern. That's not what we care about right now. Right now, we care about the work. So looking at the next one, I have at 3x squared plus 3. So this is my x squared. So to find f of x plus h, and you will have this formula with you, I am going to do 3. In place of that x, I'm going to write x plus h squared plus 3. Now I'm going to subtract f of x. So this f of x will be the orange. So this will be minus. Always put in parentheses so you remember to distribute that negative sign. And this is all over h. Now when I go and square this, and I might want to do this off to the side, when I take x plus h and I square it, remember that's x plus h times x plus h. So when I do FOIL, I'm going to have x squared, then plus xh plus hx, which I'm going to write as xh, plus h squared. So this will be x squared. These two will be the same. So plus 2xh plus h squared. That's what that's going to be. So I'm going to rewrite this as 3 times x squared plus 2xh plus h squared, and then there's that plus 3. Then here's the original function. I'm going to distribute the negative sign while I'm here, so this will be -3x minus 3, and this is all over h. Distributing the 3, I'm going to have 3x squared plus 6xh plus 3h squared plus 3, and then keeping this in the orange, minus 3x squared minus 3, and this is all over h. Looking for terms that'll cancel. The positive 3x and the negative 3x will equal 0. The positive 3 and the negative 3 will equal 0. I'm left with 6x plus 3h squared all over h. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look in the numerator, and I see that they both have an h in common, so I'm going to factor out an h and make it h times the quantity of 6x plus 3, and when I factor one of these h's away, I'm going to have just h all over h. The h's will now simplify, and my final answer is going to be 6x plus 3h, and that is my final answer. All right, moving on to the next one. Here I have 3x squared plus 5. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put in x plus h for this x. So I'm going to have 3 times x plus h squared, and then plus 5, and then I'm going to subtract f of x. I'm going to put a negative sign, and then write the whole thing, making sure that I remember to do that parenthesis, so I distribute my negative sign, and this is all over h. Well, remember from last time. Well, we should remember it. This will be x squared plus 2xh plus h squared plus 5, and then distributing it in the negative sign, minus 3x squared minus 5, and this whole thing is over h. Distributing the 3, I'm going to have 3x squared plus 6xh plus 3h squared plus 5, and then minus 3x squared minus 5 all over h. The 3x squareds will equal 0. The 5s will equal 0. I'm just going to go over here. I'm left with 6xh plus 3h squared all over h. Factoring out the h, I'm going to have 6x plus 3h all over h, and I'm left with 6x plus 3h, which is the exact same answer I got last time, but it was a different function, and that's okay. Some things that you should notice is everything behind the original function, that should equal 0. You should be able to find the opposite term somewhere in the front, and that should all cancel out. Okay, the next one, I have x squared plus 3x plus h. So in this case, I have x 2 times. So I'm going to have to put that x plus h in the equation twice. So it'll look like x plus h squared plus 3 times x plus h plus 3. That's doing the f of x plus h. Now I'm going to do minus f of x, so minus, and then in a parenthesis, I'm going to write x squared plus 3x plus 3, and this is all going to be over h. Here, remembering that this is x squared plus 2xh plus h squared, distributing the 3, 3x plus 3h plus 3, distributing the negative sign, negative x squared minus 3x minus 3, and this is all over h. Here the x squareds will equal 0, the 3x and the negative 3x will equal 0, the 3 and the negative 3 will equal 0. I'm actually going to go look for each one of those up here, the opposite, because they should all simplify. Everything that's left here has an h, and h. So I'm going to factor out the h as I go down to do the next step. So let's get a pen back. So I'm going to factor on h and make it h times, here I'll be left with 2x. H squared, when I factor on h, I'll be left with h. 3h, I'll be left with 3. And this is all over h. The h is simplified, and my final answer is 2x plus h plus 3. Something else that you should be aware of, whatever you're left with that does not simplify should have an h. You should be able to factor on h from the numerator. If you cannot factor on h from the numerator, somewhere in that problem you made a mistake. All right, moving on to the next one. Same thing, we're going to put in x plus h twice. So x plus h will go in twice, so this will be 4 times the quantity of x plus h squared plus 4 times x plus h plus 4 minus the original equation, putting it in parentheses, all over h. Okay, now I'm going to FOIL. I'm going to FOIL the x plus h squared. And when I do that, I get, I'll leave the 4 outside. This will be x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. I'm going to go ahead and distribute my 4, so plus 4x plus 4h plus 4. Distributing my negative sign, so this will be minus 4x squared minus 4x minus 4, and this is all over h. have to distribute this 4. So when I distribute that 4, I'm going to have 4x squared plus 8xh plus 4h squared plus 4x plus 4h plus 4, then minus 4x squared minus 4x minus 4, and then this is all over h. Okay, negative 4x squared, looking for a positive 4x squared. Negative 4x, looking for a positive 4x. Negative 4, looking for a positive 4. Those all equal 0. Everything that's left has an h in it. So I'm going to factor out the h while I write down the next line. So this will be h times the quantity of xh plus 4h plus 4. This is all over h. The h's simplify, and I'm left with x plus 4h plus 4. And that's my final answer. Okay, the next one I think is probably going to be one of the hardest ones for you to understand, just because it's a fraction and you don't normally like working with fractions. So I'm going to go very slow, and we're going to start off just the way we started off the other one, where we're going to put in x plus h in for this x. So I don't lose it, I'm going to make this negative sign go with the 1. I'm not just going to leave it hanging out in front. So I'm going to have negative 1 over 2 times the quantity of x plus h plus 2 minus f of x, which will be, oh, I forgot to switch colors, my bad. Minus, so this will be negative 1 over 2x plus 2. And then this whole thing is over h, which I'm just going to keep on writing that, but that over h I'm not going to worry about for quite a while. In order to do this, in order to have these fractions here, I'm going to rewrite it for just one brief moment. So this is negative 1. I'm going to leave it as 2 times x plus h. I could distribute the 2 if I wanted to. I'm not going to. So then this will be plus, because the negative times the negative will make that a positive. So this will be plus 1 over 2x plus 2. And then this whole thing is over h. Again, we're going to worry about that over h later. So in order to add two fractions, I have to have a common denominator. The lowest common denominator between these two is if I'm going to take these two and multiply them. So I'm going to have to multiply. So I'm going to write it this way. My lowest common denominator is going to be 2 times x plus h plus 2, that whole thing, times 2x plus 2. That's going to be my lowest common denominator. In order to get that lowest common denominator, I'm going to have to multiply the blue fraction by this 2x plus 2. So if I multiply my denominator by the 2x plus 2, which now I have that denominator I want, I have to multiply the numerator by that 2x plus 2. So when I do that, I'm going to distribute the negative sign. So I'm going to have negative 2x minus 2. To have this fraction have the common denominator, I'm going to have to multiply the denominator by this 2 times x plus h plus 2. And then I'm going to have to multiply the numerator by that as well, x plus h plus 2. So when I do that, I'm going to have plus, I'm going to go ahead and distribute the 2 now. 2x plus 2h plus 2. And then this whole thing is over h. Again, worrying about that later. Just writing it so I don't forget. Here, same thing as had before. This orange is what's the original function was. So negative 2x, positive 2x. Negative 2, positive 2. So those will all simplify. I'm left with 2h. So right now I have 2h in the numerator. My denominator, if you want to go ahead and write this as 2x plus 2h plus 2 times 2x plus 2. That's my denominator. And then this whole thing has been divided by h this entire time. And I can think of h as h over 1. Well, when I divide a fraction by a fraction, I can multiply it by the reciprocal. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply it by 1 over h. Now I can see that the h's will simplify. And my final answer is going to be 2 over 2x plus 2h plus 2 times 2x plus 2. And I'm going to leave it like that. No, it does not matter the order that you write those ordered pairs. And that's how a rational one's going to look. So let's just try one more of those. So here I have 1 over 2x plus 3. Again, I'm going to start by substituting in the x plus h every place that I see this x. So I'm going to have 1 over 2 times the quantity of x plus h plus 3. And then I'm going to subtract the original function, so minus, and then this will be 1 over 2x plus 3. And this whole thing is going to be over h. Okay, and so I don't think of, so I don't drop this negative sign. I'm going to think of this as plus and negative 1, just so I can keep track of my negative sign. Same problem that we did before. We have to have a common denominator. So I am going to multiply this one by 2x plus 3, 2x plus 3. So now I'm going to write this next to it. So this will be equal to, my common denominator is going to be that 2x plus 3 times 2x plus h plus 3. So there I multiplied. So when I distribute this one, I'm going to have 2x plus 3. I'm going to multiply this one by 2 times the quantity of x plus h plus 3. So 2 times the quantity of x plus h plus 3. So when I do that, that'll be this negative 1 times this. So, so I'm going to have plus negative 1. And then in parentheses, I'm going to have 2 times x plus h plus 3. So, and this is all over h. Different color, so sorry about that. So here, when I get this, I'm still going to keep this orange. So I'm just going down here. I'm going to have 2x plus 3. And I'm going to have plus. And then so I'm going to take a negative 1 times 2 and distribute times this x plus h. So I'm going to have minus 2x minus 2h. And then this negative 1 times the 3 will be minus 3. All over my common denominator, 2x plus 3, distributing that 2x plus 2h plus 3. And this is all over my h, which is h over 1. Just writing that so we remember that. Here, the 2x, negative 2x, 3, and 3, they all simplify. So I'm left with a negative 2h over my denominator. And I'm going to multiply it by the reciprocal of my denominator. So I'm going to multiply it by 1 over h. The h's will simplify. And I'm going to be left with negative 2 over 2x plus 3 and 2x plus 2h plus 3. So that's the video on how to do the practice problems. I hope it helps.